Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure to be back.
Today we're going to try to get to the bottom of what really happened to Sisqo's music career.
Oh, yeah, Sisqo. He of Thong Song fame.
Exactly. I mean, that song was huge back in the day.
Definitely a classic, though. I'm not sure I could tell you the lyrics beyond the chorus.
Huh. You and me both. I mean, some of the lyrics are pretty suggestive, let's just say that.
Right. But catchy, no doubt.
For sure. But anyway, where were we? Oh, yeah. Sisqo's career.
Right, so to really get into it, we have to go back to his early days. He actually got his start as a member of the R&B group Dru Hill.
I vaguely remember them.
They were pretty big in the late 90s, known for their harmonies, the dancing. Sisqo really stood out, even then.
His voice was incredible. Like, even as part of a group, you could tell he had something special.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And then, boom, Thong Song drops,
Yeah.
and he becomes a solo superstar.
I mean, that song was everywhere. You couldn't escape it. I remember hearing it in the grocery store, on the radio, at parties. Yeah, it was inescapable. And it wasn't just a fluke either. He had Incomplete after that, which also did incredibly well.
Right, and he even won a Billboard Music Award, didn't he?
He did, for top R&B hip-hop single. Thong Song really made a mark.
It definitely did. So, then what happened? Things just seemed to slow down for him, didn't they?
It's not uncommon for artists to have a peak and then struggle to maintain that same level of success. It's a tough industry.
I mean, I get that, but with Sisqo, it feels like there's more to the story.
Well, he's been pretty vocal about claiming he was blacklisted.
Blacklisted, seriously?
Yeah, there's an interview where he straight up says, I wouldn't have cursed out that one executive at the record label that put me on the blacklist.
Whoa, okay, hold on. He actually admitted to that, like publicly.
Yep. And it's not just some random executive either. He's talking about Liar Cohen.
Liar Cohen. Wait, as in the Liar Cohen?
The one and only. Jay-Z's mentor. Huge name in the industry, and definitely a controversial figure.
Wow. Okay, things just got a whole lot more interesting. So Sisqo is publicly saying he was blacklisted by Liar Cohen. What are we supposed to make of that?
Well, it definitely adds a layer of complexity to Sisqo's story. Like I said, Liar Cohen is a very powerful guy, but he also has a pretty, let's say, strong reputation.
I've heard some things. What kind of reputation are we talking about?
Well, some people accuse him of exploiting street culture for profit without really giving back to those communities.
I can see that.
For example, he was a driving force behind the commercialization of gangster rap. And there's a big debate about whether that ultimately helped or hurt the artists and the communities involved.
So Sisqo is claiming to be blacklisted by a figure who is already known for being a bit ruthless, shall we say. It does kind of make you wonder.
Exactly. And then on top of all that, you've got the speculation about Sisqo's personal life.
Oh yeah, the rumors about his sexuality.
Exactly. For years, people have been gossiping about whether he was gay or bisexual.
An artist's personal life is their business.
Agreed. But unfortunately, that kind of speculation can really overshadow everything else.
Yeah. It's frustrating that sometimes an artist's personal life becomes this huge distraction from their actual work and talent.
Right. Like, why are we even focusing on that? We should be talking about his music, not his personal life.
Although I do remember Sisqo addressing those rumors pretty cleverly. He basically made a joke out of it and refused to let people put him in a box.
He did have a way with deflecting things with humor, for sure. But still, it feels like that whole thing about his sexuality. Maybe it was a distraction, like maybe it took attention away from those bigger issues he was talking about.
You know what? That's a good point. It's like everyone was so focused on the rumors that they missed the bigger picture.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So we've got potential blacklisting by a powerful figure, the media frenzy about his personal life, and then there's this whole other layer to consider. This is where things get a bit murky.
Murky, huh? Go on. I'm intrigued.
Well, there are all these rumors swirling around about the music industry and,
Yeah.
well, a darker side to how things operate.
Darker side. What, like beyond just the typical competitive pressure?
Exactly. We're talking about whispers of weird rituals at industry parties, artists being pressured into compromising situations, even stories of blackmail being used to keep people in line.
Whoa, hold on. Rituals, blackmail. That sounds like something out of a movie. Is there any truth to any of this?
It's hard to say for sure. A lot of this stuff is based on speculation and things people have heard through the grapevine.
Right. The music industry is notoriously secretive.
Exactly. It's tough to know what to believe sometimes. But these rumors have been around for a long time, and they always seem to pop up when an artist has a sudden downfall or starts saying cryptic things about the industry.
Okay, so even if we can't prove any of this stuff, the fact that these rumors persist and that people believe them, it creates a certain atmosphere, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It feeds into this idea that the industry is full of secrets and hidden agendas.
And that can be incredibly intimidating for artists, especially those who are just starting out.
For sure. It can create a real power imbalance. Artists might be afraid to speak out against unfair treatment because they worry about the consequences.
Right, like they might be afraid of getting blacklisted or having their careers sabotaged.
Exactly. And that fear can be incredibly silencing.
So let me see if I'm following this. We've got Sisqo claiming he was blacklisted after a run-in with Liar Cohen, who has his own controversial reputation. And then there's this whole other layer of rumors about the industry itself.
You got it. And it all adds up to a pretty unsettling picture, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah.
there might be something more going on beneath the surface than we realize.
It's all a bit unnerving, to be honest.
I agree. And it gets even more complicated when you consider some of the things Sisqo himself has said about selling his soul.
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, in an interview, he talks about how he chose to go the long way and refused to compromise his values, even if it meant missing out on fame and fortune.
That's interesting. What do you think he was referring to? Do you think he was talking about those darker aspects of the industry that we were just discussing?
It's hard to say for sure, but his words definitely suggest that he felt there was pressure to conform to certain SOT's expectations, and that he was willing to walk away from it all rather than give in.
That takes guts.
For sure. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What was he being asked to do? What lines was he unwilling to cross?
Now, I'm really curious, and it's fascinating to see how his fans have interpreted all of this.
Oh, absolutely. They have some strong opinions. A lot of them seem to think he was deliberately sabotaged. Like, he refused to play by the industry's unspoken rules, and they made him pay for it.
There are definitely some comments online about him being blackballed and silenced for speaking truth to power.
Exactly. And one comment I saw really stuck with me. It said something like, you could make a horror movie about the music industry.
Wow, yeah, that is chilling. But, it does kind of capture the feeling we're talking about, doesn't it? Like there are these unseen forces pulling the strings, and the artists themselves are just pawns in a bigger game.
A very dark game, perhaps. So here we are with this question. Is Sisqo's story unique? Or does this point to something more systemic, something rotten at the core of the music industry itself?
That's a really big question, and I think it's one that we need to explore further.
I agree. If we want to understand what really happened to Sisqo, we can't just look at him in isolation. We have to look at the bigger picture, the context of the industry itself.
Well, it looks like we've got a lot more to unpack here.
We definitely do, and I think it's going to take us down some pretty interesting paths. You know what's interesting about all this?
What's that?
Well, Sisqo's story. It seems to play into a lot of those long-standing anxieties people have about the music industry.
You mean those kind of conspiracy theory things, like secret societies and stuff?
Exactly, that kind of stuff. The Illuminati, artists being pressured to compromise their values. These ideas have been around forever.
Yeah, I gotta be honest, I always kind of dismissed that stuff as a bit too out there, like something you'd read in a tabloid.
Right. But then you hear Sisqo talk about feeling pressured, maybe even blacklisted, and then you hear those whispers about a darker side to the industry. It makes you wonder.
Makes you wonder if there's more to it, for sure.
Right. And the problem is, it's so hard to separate fact from fiction in these situations. The music industry is all about image, secrecy, keeping things hush-hush.
Totally. It's like everyone is playing this game with all these rules, but nobody tells you what the rules actually are.
That's a great way to put it. And you got to remember, for a lot of these artists, especially the young ones, the stakes are really high.
Oh, absolutely. They're chasing their dreams, facing pressure from their labels, from their fans.
Exactly. And that makes them vulnerable.
Vulnerable to what?
To manipulation, to exploitation. Maybe someone promises them the world, tells them they'll be a star, but there's a price to pay.
Right, like they have to compromise something. Their values, their creative control, who knows?
Exactly. And then you throw in those rumors about the darker stuff, the rituals, the blackmail.
It creates a whole different level of fear, doesn't it?
For sure. Even if only half those rumors are true. It's enough to make an artist think twice about speaking up, you know?
So you're saying that even if we can't definitively prove that any of this stuff is actually happening,
Yeah,
the fact that people believe it has a real impact.
absolutely. Think about it. If you're an artist and you're worried about being blacklisted or sabotaged, are you really going to speak out against someone powerful?
Probably not. It's too risky.
Exactly. And that's how these systems stay in place. The silence protects those in power.
That's a pretty disturbing thought, isn't it?
It is. And, it's not just the music industry. It's Hollywood. It's politics. Anywhere where you have these big power dynamics.
You're right. This kind of thing happens everywhere.
It does. And I think that's why Sisqo's story resonates with so many people.
Yeah.
Because it taps into that fear that something isn't quite right.
Yeah. It's like those fan comments we were reading earlier, people talking about Sisqo being sabotaged. It's like they can sense something sinister is going on behind the scenes.
Oh, totally. And remember that comment about the horror movie? That really nails it, I think.
Yeah, the idea that the music industry is like a horror movie.
Right. With these unseen forces manipulating everything, the artists are just the victims, caught in this web they can't escape from.
Makes you wonder how many other artists have stories like Sisqo's, stories we'll never hear.
I bet there are a lot.
Mhm.
People who were too afraid to speak up, or who tried to and were silenced. It's a scary thought.
It is. So what do we do about it? I mean, this seems like such a massive problem. What can we do as listeners, as fans?
That's a great question. And honestly, it's easy to feel powerless in these situations, but I think it's important to remember that even small actions can make a difference.
Like what?
Well, for starters, we can support those artists who are speaking out.
Yeah, wow.
Share their music, amplify their voices on social media, let them know they're not alone.
I like that. Anything else?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can educate ourselves about the issues, learn about organizations that are fighting for artists' rights.
Right. Support the people who are trying to make a difference.
Exactly. Even donating a few bucks to an organization that's doing good work, that can have a real impact.
What about those of us who don't have a lot of money to spare?
You know what? Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just talk about it.
Talk about it.
Yep. Have these conversations with your friends, with your family. Raise awareness. The more we talk about these issues, the harder it is for them to stay hidden in the shadows.
That makes sense. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, as they say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So share articles online, discuss it with your friends, let people know that this is something we should all be concerned about.
When we started this deep dive, I thought we were just going to be talking about Sisqo's career, but this has turned into something so much bigger, hasn't it?
It really has.
Yeah.
We started with one artist's story, and now we're talking about the potential for a whole system to be corrupted.
Yeah, and how that system might be silencing voices and exploiting people.
Right. It's not just about Sisqo anymore. It's about everyone who's ever dreamed of making music and the forces that might be working against them.
So what now? I mean, where do we go from here?
Well, I think the first step is to acknowledge that there's a problem. We can't fix something if we don't admit it's broken.
Right, but acknowledging a problem is one thing. Actually doing something about it, that feels overwhelming.
I hear you. But remember what we said about small actions. Even something as simple as having a conversation about this with a friend. That's a step in the right direction.
Okay, that I can do.
You and everyone listening. The more people are aware of this, the more pressure we can put on the industry to change.
So we need to keep talking about this, keep asking questions.
Exactly. And we need to keep supporting those artists who are brave enough to speak out. They're the ones who are going to lead the way.
Well, this has been a really eye-opening conversation.
It has. And I have a feeling this is just the beginning.
So, wow. We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have a lot to think about.
I mean, where do we even begin to answer that initial question? What really happened to Sisqo?
It's tough. I'm not sure we can say for certain. There are so many different factors at play and so much we just don't know.
Right, but we can't just ignore all this, right?
Absolutely not. Sisqo's story, whether it's entirely accurate or not, it raises some really important questions about the music industry.
Okay, but those questions, those are kind of scary, to be honest. The blacklisting, the rumors, the idea that there's this dark underbelly to the music industry.
I know. It's unsettling, isn't it? It's like we want to believe in the music, in the artists, in this idea of creative expression.
Yeah.
But then you start to see these cracks in the facade.
And those cracks, they might lead to something pretty ugly.
It's possible.
So what do we do? I mean, this whole conversation has been super eye-opening, but it's also kind of disheartening.
I get it. It's like, okay. How
Yeah.
can we enjoy the music knowing that this stuff might be happening behind the scenes?
Exactly. It kind of makes you want to just tune it all out.
I hear you, but I don't think that's the answer. Ignoring a problem doesn't make it go away.
So what's the alternative? What can we do?
Well, I think awareness is a good first step, like we've been doing here. Talking about these issues, bringing them out into the light.
Right, but awareness on its own, that doesn't really change anything, does it?
True, but it's a starting point. Once people are aware of a problem, they can start to demand change.
Okay, so let's say I'm a music fan and I'm listening to this right now. I'm feeling all these things, worried, a little angry maybe. What can I actually do?
Well, think about who you support. Whose music do you buy? Whose concerts do you attend? Who do you follow online?
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Right. Support those artists who are speaking out, who are trying to make a difference. Put your money where your values are.
Right, and I guess call out the bad behavior when we see it.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to speak up, to criticize the industry when it deserves it.
We have to make it clear that we won't tolerate exploitation or abuse.
Exactly. And don't forget, support those organizations that are fighting for artists' rights. There are a lot of good people out there working to make the industry a better place.
So it's like vote with your wallet and your voice.
I like that. Vote with your wallet and your voice. Make it clear what you stand for.
You know, as much as this deep dive has been, well, a bit unsettling, I'm glad we had this conversation.
Me too. It's important to have these discussions, even when they're tough.
It's like shining a light into the darkness.
Exactly. And even if that light is small, it can still make a difference.
That's a great way to put it. Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to chew on today.
We have. And hopefully we've inspired them to think critically about the music they listen to and the industry that produces it.
And if you're listening to this and you have a story to share, please reach out to us.
Yes, we want to hear from you.
Your voice matters. Every voice matters.
And together, maybe we can start to make a change.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll be back soon with another episode exploring, well, who knows what.
Some mysteries never end, do they? Until next time.